I walked into the house on Christmas morning with my kids. My dad looked at me and said, "Things were finally quiet, and then you walked in." My 7-year-old dropped his eyes. I kissed the top of his head and said softly, "Then my wallet will go with me." 5 minutes later, my dad was begging me not to leave. Things were finally quiet, and then you walked in. That's what my dad said the second I stepped through the door on Christmas morning. My 7-year-old was holding a box wrapped in silver paper, smiling up at him. That smile disappeared like someone had flipped a switch. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I kissed my son's head and said, "Then my wallet will go with me." And I turned around. My dad didn't move. He just stood there like I hadn't just shattered the script we followed every year. My mom peeked from the kitchen. Her mouth was slightly open, but she didn't say anything. He never does. By the time we reached the car, I had 5 missed calls. He went from pretending I didn't exist to suddenly begging me not to leave, as if I hadn't been funding half his life since I was 22. I was done being the one who kept it all glued together. This time I didn't even flinch. We didn't go to another Christmas party. We didn't try to fix the day. I drove my kids home, made pancakes, and watched movies with them. It was the calmest Christmas I'd had in years. But my phone didn't stop buzzing. He kept calling, kept texting. I didn't respond. Later that night, I got a message from him saying, "You're being dramatic. Don't punish your father on Christmas." Punish him? I'd been carrying this man financially and emotionally for over a decade. Every birthday, holiday, family gathering, he had something nasty to say, and he always chose me or my kids as the target. Then he'd act like nothing happened. No apology. Just a smirk and an expectation that I'd be back the next day with groceries or cash or both. My dad never cared about Christmas. What he cared about was the envelope I usually slid into his hand after dinner. The one labeled "for bills," that somehow always disappeared into a new set of tools or cigars, or another subscription to a magazine he'd never read. I used to tell myself he'd change. That one day he'd look at my boys and realize he had another shot at being a decent grandfather. That maybe he'd finally say something kind without it costing me $100. But this Christmas made it clear, he wasn't interested in changing. And I was done being the idiot who kept hoping he would. I didn't answer his texts that night or the next day. On December 27th, I finally unblocked him long enough to send a message he wouldn't forget. "From today on, you won't get a single cent from me. I will no longer be your walking wallet, and I don't want you anywhere near my children. My money and my children's love will go to the person who deserves it, my father-in-law." Then I blocked him again everywhere. But it wouldn't be the last time I heard from him. Not even close. Because when people like my dad lose control over someone they've used for years, they don't let go quietly. They try to pull you back. And next time he'd go even lower than I ever thought he could. It was 3 weeks after Christmas when my aunt showed up at my door. I hadn't spoken to her in months. She stood there in a long coat holding a grocery bag like she came straight from the store, but I could tell something was off. She didn't even say hi. Just walked in like it was still 2005 and she had a key. I let her, mostly out of habit. She sat down at my table, looked me in the eye, and told me my dad was sick. Not like cold and flu sick. Sick. She said it in that low, dramatic way people do when they're about to ask for something. He had cancer. That's what she claimed. And according to her, it was aggressive, late stage, and he'd been hiding it from everyone. Except now he needed help. Money. For treatment. Fast. I didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even hesitate. I felt like someone had ripped the floor out from under me. As much as I hated him in that moment, he was still my dad. Still the man who taught me how to ride a bike before he became someone I barely recognized. I told her I'd go see him. He was staying at his house, looking thinner, quieter, almost like someone had taken a rough copy of him and blurred out the edges. He barely spoke when I walked in, just gave a weak nod. Said he'd been to the doctor but didn't trust hospitals. Didn't want to go through chemo. Said he had a guy, an old friend, a private doctor who was handling everything quietly off the books. That part should have tipped me off. But I wasn't thinking straight. I was thinking like a daughter again. He asked for the money. Said he didn't want it going through insurance. Said the doctor needed payment up front. I wired him the money that same night. A little over $12,000. It was most of what I had saved for our summer vacation. I told my husband we could skip it this year. I didn't tell him where the money went. I didn't want to get into another fight about my dad. For a week after that I checked in. My texts went mostly unanswered. He said he was resting. Said the treatments were exhausting. That his phone was off most of the day. I believed it. Until my cousin, the one who doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut, posted a photo. It was my dad, laughing, at a poker table in Reno. No mask. No IVs. No sign of chemo. Just a pile of chips in front of him, a drink in his hand, and a woman in a red dress sitting on his lap. The caption said, "Uncle Larry never misses a weekend." I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands went cold. I messaged her instantly. She said he'd been there all week. Acting normal. Joking. Drinking. Not a word about being sick. I didn't even bother confronting him. I didn't scream. I didn't go to his house. I just sat there in my kitchen, realizing my own father had faked cancer to steal from me. From his own daughter. But this time he didn't just take my money. He killed the last part of me that still wanted to believe he could be better. After the shock wore off, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, I was. But something in me just shut down. Like a door had slammed shut and I couldn't bring myself to even care what was behind it anymore. I didn't text him. I didn't try to get the money back. I knew I wouldn't see a single cent. And honestly, it wasn't even about the money at that point. It was about the fact that he looked me in the eyes, told me he was dying, and watched me transfer my savings without a flicker of shame. That weekend I told my husband everything. I expected him to be furious and he was, but he wasn't surprised. He'd warned me for years. Said my dad used me. Said every favor turned into an invoice I never got paid back for. I always defended him, told myself my dad was just bad at showing love. I think I knew I was lying even back then. My husband didn't say, "I told you so." He just nodded and said, "Then it's time." And it was. We started packing a week later. Moved 2 states away, closer to my in-laws. My father-in-law had always been the quiet, kind type. Never asked for anything, always remembered the boys' birthdays and treated me like I mattered. The exact opposite of my own dad. So we told him the truth too, that we were starting over. And we wanted him to be a real part of our lives. The night before we left, I blocked every number connected to my father. Phone, email, social, everything. I even called the bank and flagged the account I'd sent the money from, in case he ever tried to pull something again. I thought that was it. That I was free. But people like him, they don't just let you go. Not when they still think there's something to squeeze out of you. It started with the guilt calls. My mom, my aunt, even a few of his old drinking buddies. All with the same message. He misses you, he's sorry, he didn't mean it, he's not perfect, but he's still your dad. One of them even had the nerve to say, "Don't let money come between family." Like that was all this was about. Like money was the problem, not the years of manipulation, insults, guilt-tripping, and now pretending to be terminally ill just to steal from me. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't owe them that. But 2 weeks after we settled into our new place, a letter showed up. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I knew too well. Inside was a photo of him in a hospital bed, looking frail, tubes in his nose, pale skin. The whole setup. The note said, "I really am sick now. Please don't let me die alone." No medical records. No dates. No diagnosis. Just a picture. I looked at it for about 5 seconds before I tossed it in the trash. Because even if he was telling the truth this time, I couldn't trust it. And that's the price of what he did. He didn't just burn the bridge. He made sure nothing could grow back where it used to be. A month passed without a word. Then, for a while, I started to believe it might really be over. That maybe he finally realized I was serious. My boys were thriving in the new school. My husband was happier, calmer. I was sleeping through the night again. Then one afternoon I got a knock at the door. It was my aunt again. Same coat, same face, like she had news she didn't want to say out loud. I didn't want to let her in, but I did. This time she didn't sit down. She held out a manila envelope, sealed with just my name on it. I asked her what it was. She said, "Your dad wanted me to give you this in person. He didn't trust the mail." I didn't say anything. Just took it, nodded, and closed the door. She didn't even try to argue. Inside the envelope was a legal document. A will. Or at least something that looked like one. It was typed and signed supposedly by him and a lawyer, someone I'd never heard of, and it was filled with garbage. The gist of it was he was dying again. This time for real. And he wanted to leave everything to me. The house. Her. His tools. Some vague mention of savings. It looked like an apology at first glance, but it wasn't. Not really, because attached was a sticky note that read, "Just cover the lawyer's fee and the paperwork processing. It'll be yours. $5,000 should be enough. Talk soon. Dad." He hadn't changed. He just shifted tactics. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so completely, insanely him. I didn't even wonder if the will was fake. I knew it was. The same man who asked for money for cancer treatment in Reno was now selling me back my own forgiveness for $5,000. He didn't want to make peace. He wanted a transaction. I didn't reply. I didn't even get angry. I took the envelope, walked outside, and burned the entire thing in a metal bucket behind our garage. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because a week later my father-in-law came home with a strange look on his face. He said a man had shown up at his workshop. Said he was my dad. Said he was just passing through, and thought he'd introduce himself. He left behind a small package. A wooden box, nothing written on it. Inside was a photo of me as a baby and a note that said, "She used to love me. Ask her what changed." My stomach dropped. Not because he showed up, but because I realized something terrifying. He wasn't trying to win me back. He was trying to turn people against me. And if I didn't stop him, he was going to go even further. I stared at the note for a long time. My father-in-law had laid it gently on the table like it might explode. I could see in his face that he didn't know what to make of it, but he wasn't angry, just confused. That scared me more than anything. Because my dad knew exactly what he was doing. He'd learned over the years that the fastest way to mess with me wasn't directly, it was through people I loved. If he couldn't guilt me, he'd poison everything around me. Make it look like I was the one holding a grudge. Like he was the abandoned old man just trying to make amends. I didn't say much. I just nodded, thanked my father-in-law for telling me, and told him not to worry. But in my head something shifted. All those years I spent trying to fix things, trying to be the bigger person, they hadn't made me stronger. They'd made me easy to manipulate. Predictable. He knew I'd stay quiet to avoid drama. He knew I wouldn't confront him if I thought it would make things worse for my kids. He thought I'd just walk away again and let him spin the story. This time I wasn't going to. The next morning I called a lawyer. A real one. Told her everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every dollar. I gave her bank statements, messages, even the fake will. She asked me what I wanted to do. Sue? Press charges? No. I wanted something simpler. I wanted a restraining order. Took about 2 weeks, but I got it. He was officially barred from contacting me, my children, my husband, or anyone in our immediate family. He couldn't show up at our home, my kids' school, my husband's job, nothing. If he did, he'd be arrested on the spot. I mailed a copy to his address, certified. He signed for it. I didn't send a note. Didn't say a word. Let the paperwork speak for itself. That same day, I finally sat down with my father-in-law and told him everything. Not just the cancer lie, not just the money, all of it. The years of emotional abuse, the manipulation, the way he used holidays and birthdays as weapons, how he made my kids feel like intruders in their own family. He didn't say much. Just nodded, listened, and poured us both a cup of tea. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You didn't lose a father. You just stopped pretending you had one." The next day my dad's sister tried again. Another message. This one not asking for money, just saying my dad was in the hospital, for real this time. That if I didn't come now I'd regret it forever. I didn't go. I didn't answer. Instead I made a decision. I started writing everything down. Not for revenge. Not to get even. But so that if my boys ever asked me years from now why we don't talk to him, I'd be ready. I'd show them the truth, not with anger or bitterness, but with facts. Because the best way to stop a manipulator is not to fight them. It's to make sure they can never rewrite the story. 3 months after I filed the restraining order, I got the last message I would ever receive about my dad. It wasn't from him or my aunt or anyone in the family. It was from a woman I didn't know. Someone who worked at the hospital near where he lived. She said she found my name listed as an emergency contact. He said he was there. For real this time. Not faking. Something with his heart. Serious. I stared at the message for a long time. There was no anger left, just this quiet stillness in my chest. I knew what she wanted. What everyone always wanted. The dramatic bedside moment. The forgiveness arc. The scene where I show up, hold his hand, cry, and give him peace before the end. But people like my dad write checks they think death will cash. He lived his whole life believing that no matter what damage he caused, no matter how many bridges he burned, he could say, "I'm dying," and reset the scoreboard. But this time there was no reset. There was no scoreboard. There was just the truth. I didn't answer the message. I sat with my kids that night, made popcorn, and watched a movie. No one asked about Grandpa. No one cried. No one brought up Christmas. The next morning I deleted the text. Not out of hate, but because I meant what I said months ago. He was erased. Completely. Weeks later I heard through someone else that he'd passed. No service. No funeral. He left behind some debt, an old car, and a pile of tools in the garage. No letter. No apology. And I felt free. Not relieved. Not happy. Just finally untied. I didn't lose a father that day. I lost him a long time ago. The moment he looked at my children like they were a burden and told me I ruined the peace just by walking in the door. I chose that day to protect my kids from the kind of love that makes you feel smaller every time you get close to it. No. We celebrate holidays without tension. Without insults hidden as jokes. Without wondering when the next blow will land. My kids laugh louder. My husband sleeps easier. I no longer check my phone, bracing for guilt. Me. I'm not someone's walking wallet anymore. I'm a mother. A wife. A daughter. But only to the man who earned that title, not the one who thought biology gave him a lifetime pass. My father died months ago. But I buried him the day I walked out that front door on Christmas morning. And never looked back.